Amy picked up the old album and quietly turned its pages. The soft evening light filtered through the bedroom window of her apartment in La Jolla, San Diego's upscale neighborhood. The smiling faces of herself and Michael in the photographs now felt like distant memories. Michael in his modest student uniform and herself in her white medical coat. Those days when they shared their dreams over cheap coffee from the hospital cafeteria. Listen, Amy. When I become a doctor, I'll make you happy. It might be tough now, but there will definitely be a day when it all pays off. Michael's words from back then still echoed in her ears. Amy had supported her husband through medical school while working night shifts as a nurse. They lived in a modest apartment, rarely ate out, never bought luxury items, yet they were happy. Those days spent in their cramped room filled with Michael's medical textbooks, encouraging him as he studied. She would make late-night snacks before his exams and massage his tired shoulders, believing in their future together. At least, that's what Amy believed. Among the pile of photographs spread out on the bed, her wedding ring caught the light. Their names and the date engraved on the thin platinum band. Amy quietly removed the ring and placed it in a small pink jewelry box inherited from her grandmother. She couldn't stop the tears from rolling down her cheeks. Outside the window, the California sun was painting the sky crimson. Looking back, her relationship with her sister Jessica had always been complicated. Memories at their parents' house always centered around Jessica. Her flashy blonde sister had been the apple of their parents' eye since childhood. Jessica always played the lead role in dance recitals. At school performances and sports days, all family attention was focused on her sister. Amy, you're the older sister, so you need to be understanding. You're the smart one, so you have to be considerate of Jessica. Her mother's words still stung her heart. Even in family photos, Jessica was always in the center while Amy was pushed to the side. Christmas presents, birthday celebrations, Jessica was always the star. But that was fine, Amy thought. They were family after all. Her wish for her sister's happiness was genuine. Then that day came. A single message on Michael's smartphone changed everything. In the hallway of San Diego Memorial Hospital, she accidentally saw the screen displaying love messages from her sister and photos of them together. Secret meetings at expensive restaurants, weekend hotel stays, secretly exchanged words of love. It had all been planned. Amy. Are you all right? You look pale. If her fellow nurse hadn't supported her, she would have collapsed right there. The world turned black, and she felt herself crumbling from the ground up. Everything she had built over 7 years of marriage was crumbling like a castle made of sand. A transfer to a new workplace, Scripps Mercy Hospital, became Amy's salvation. Here, the smiles of sick children gradually began to heal her heart. In the pure eyes of children fighting serious illnesses, Amy found her calling. Perhaps her meeting with Director David was destined as well. Miss Brown, your work is outstanding. We're truly fortunate to have a nurse like you at our hospital. In David's gentle voice and warm gaze, Amy gradually began to find hope. Maybe at this hospital, in this place, she could start a new life. A small light began to shine in her wounded heart. As the sun set and the room gradually darkened, Amy finally stood up. She carefully put away the scattered photos one by one and returned the album to the bookshelf. Tomorrow would bring another new day. She had decided not to look back at the past anymore. Just then, an invitation arrived in her mailbox. The golden letters, printed on high-quality paper, cast an ominous gleam in the twilight. Amy's hands trembled slightly as she held the invitation. A wedding at the Manchester Grand Hyatt. The text embossed in gold leaf on the premium paper gleamed seductively in the evening light. The reception venue was on the top floor overlooking San Diego Bay. At sunset, the grand windows would offer a spectacular California view. "Amy, you'll come, won't you? We want the whole family to celebrate. Jessica is looking forward to having you there." Her mother's phone call naturally assumed her attendance. Her voice carried a cheerfulness as if nothing had happened, the affair between her sister and ex-husband, the pain of divorce, all of it seemingly forgotten. "Should I really go?" "Everyone will." Amy consulted with her colleague Carol in the hospital break room. Outside the window, yachts bobbed on San Diego Bay, their white sails catching the breeze. Carol was her only confidant at her new workplace, and knew everything about Amy's situation. "Amy, you've done nothing wrong. Go there with your head held high. Those two are the ones who should be ashamed," Carol said while gently holding her hand. The veteran nurse's eyes held a deep look of compassion. With her gray-streaked hair pulled back, she looked almost motherly. "But I'm afraid of everyone's eyes. Even our parents are on my sister's side." Amy's voice trembled. The fresh coffee aroma rose from the cup on the table. "Show them your strength. If you run away, you're playing right into their hands. Besides, life often holds unexpected happiness." Amy nodded slightly at Carol's words. At that time, she had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. On the wedding day, the ballroom at the Manchester Grand Hyatt was decorated like a fairy tale. The light falling from massive chandeliers seemed like angels' tears. An arch of white roses and lilies adorned the altar, and the deep red carpet leading to it seemed like a path of blood. Pure white Tiffany chairs were arranged neatly, and the tables were covered with the finest linens. Amy, dressed in a modest light blue dress, took a seat at the edge of the venue. The pearl necklace at her neck was a keepsake from her late grandmother. It was her support now. Her parents sat in the front row, wearing proud expressions. As she walked between the guests, she felt their cold stares. Even former friends showed distant attitudes. People she had conversed with normally just yesterday now turned away as if they didn't know her. "I shouldn't have come. Carol, I trusted your words." Her whispered words echoed emptily in her own ears. The luxurious venue decorations made her heart feel even heavier. Then the ceremony began. As the solemn sound of the pipe organ filled the venue, Jessica entered wearing a pure white wedding dress. The designer brand dress swayed elegantly like a cloud. A diamond necklace adorned her neckline, and a Cartier bracelet graced her wrist. Michael stood in his finest tuxedo, wearing a smug expression. The couple exchanging vows before the pastor. The exchange of rings. And then, the radiant kiss scene. Everything looked like a perfect wedding. However, in Amy's heart, an unquenchable pain continued to swirl. The husband she had supported through 7 years of marriage. The sister she had cherished. Those two were now pledging their love on the altar. The reception began, and champagne was poured. Over 200 guests enjoyed the luxurious food while offering words of congratulation to the seemingly happy newlyweds. Waiters carried dishes of foie gras and caviar, the chef's special prime rib, and a 5-tiered pure white wedding cake. Everything was a perfectly orchestrated celebration of happiness. And then that moment arrived. Jessica took the microphone and looked around the venue with a bright expression. Her eyes deliberately caught Amy's seat. As the venue fell silent, Jessica's voice rang out. Her cheeks, flushed with champagne, showed an unnatural redness. Today, on our happy day, we have our dear family here with us. Her voice dripped with artificial kindness. Michael stood next to his bride with a somewhat complacent expression. Especially my sister Amy, who has joined us. Hey, Amy, could you stand up for a moment? Amy's body froze at the sudden call out. Her heart was pounding. However, prompted by the surrounding stares, she slowly stood up. Her legs were shaking, and she felt like she might collapse at any moment. I'd like to hear a few words from her as a family representative. Jessica's lips curled into a malicious smile. Her eyes gleamed like a cat that had caught its prey. Everyone, please look at my sister. She's my ugly sister who nobody loves. Is there anyone who would take her? Laughter spread through the venue. Amy's face turned pale. The lace of her handbag, gripped tightly in both hands, became damp with sweat. At that moment, Michael stood up and took the microphone. His mouth wore an arrogant smile that he had never shown during his medical school days. She's used goods, but still usable. I guarantee it. Roaring laughter filled the venue. Even her parents wore slight smiles. Amy lowered her eyes, desperately biting her trembling lips. She struggled to hold back the tears threatening to fall down her cheeks. The words, "with love and blessings," written on the invitation, now seemed like a cruel mockery. Just then, the sound of a chair scraping echoed from the back of the venue. Slowly, a man stood up. It was David. His presence was dignified, like a lighthouse standing tall in a storm. His straight-backed figure in a navy suit was full of authority. The atmosphere in the venue changed instantly. Jessica's smile froze, and the blood drained from Michael's face. All eyes turned to David. He walked forward with measured steps. Each step echoed heavily through the venue. When he took the microphone from Jessica, her hands could be seen trembling slightly. I am David Carter, Director of the National Children's Medical Center. His low, steady voice resonated through the venue. It carried the authority of a physician who had saved countless lives. A murmur went through the crowd. Who is he? Jessica whispered to her husband. Michael's face tensed. He knew. This was an influential figure at one of America's top children's hospitals. And a physician far beyond his own reach. Today, I'd like to talk about a nurse. David's gaze turned quietly to Amy. She is one of the most trusted nurses at our hospital. Even after night shifts, she visits the rooms of critically ill children, holds the hands of exhausted mothers, and continues to encourage them. The venue fell silent. Last month, a 6-month-old baby was brought in with a serious heart condition. The parents were at their wits' end, only able to cry. At that time, Amy stayed with that baby for 48 hours, barely resting. David took a photo from his pocket. Look at this photo. A smiling baby and parents. And Amy, smiling kindly despite her tired face. Isn't this true love and dedication? Suddenly, a voice rose from the back of the venue. A woman stood up. In her arms was a girl about 8 years old. This is my daughter Sarah. 2 years ago, she was in critical condition with severe pneumonia. Miss Amy read storybooks to Sarah every day. She held my daughter's hand as she suffered from high fever, never letting go. Sarah's mother, Jane Wilson's voice was trembling. When she took a turn for the worse in the middle of the night, Amy was the first to rush to her side. My daughter is alive thanks to her. She is our angel. At those words, people began standing up all around the venue. Colleagues from the children's hospital, patients' families. They were witnesses to the lives Amy had saved. One after another, moving testimonies were shared. Words of gratitude for Amy flooded the venue. David took the microphone again. Yes, she is a treasure at our hospital. Saving children in life-threatening conditions, maintaining hope even in desperate situations. Who could say such a person is unloved by anyone? At those words, the expressions of the guests transformed. The previous mockery disappeared, replaced by deep respect. The sister and Michael's faces turned pale. The parents looked down. Furthermore, there is something else I must tell you. David's voice grew even stronger. Recently, we received preliminary notification from the American Pediatric Nursing Association about their annual Excellence in Nursing Award. The recipient is Amy Brown. Loud applause erupted from the venue. Amy stood rooted to the spot, unable to stop her tears. It felt like all her past hardships had been rewarded. David's gaze turned to Michael. His eyes were sharp, carrying a judgmental gleam. Aren't you ashamed as a doctor? Falsifying patient records, taking an intimidating attitude toward residents, and above all, betraying your wife and carrying on an affair with her sister. My hospital would never hire a doctor like you. Michael collapsed into his chair. The venue buzzed with whispers. And Miss Jessica. You tried to destroy your sister's life out of mere jealousy. However, truly valuable people don't take pleasure in others' misfortune. They are the ones who save lives and give hope to others. David slowly walked toward Amy's seat. His figure was as gallant as a prince from a fairy tale. In the sunset-lit venue, the two of them stood illuminated. Silence dominated the venue. All eyes were on them. Amy. David's voice gently called her name. You are the one most deserving of love. I came here today to prove that. I remember well the day I first met you. Despite being exhausted after a night shift, you were reading a storybook at the bedside of a critically ill child. That sight captured my heart. Each of his words sank deep into Amy's heart. Your smile is a beacon of hope for sick children. Your kindness is the support for families in desperate situations. And your dedication is the pride of our entire hospital staff. The venue was wrapped in silence. I was moved by your passion for your work. And I was deeply drawn to your pure heart. Each day, seeing you became my joy. Large tears rolled down Amy's cheeks. David slowly knelt on one knee. But you have the right to know. The true nature of Michael Thompson. David's voice took on a stern tone. He was a man who couldn't even maintain basic medical ethics. He only cared about his own achievements without listening to patients' suffering, unreasonable treatment of residents, and most seriously, falsification of medical records. The venue stirred. Michael's face turned ashen. Let me be specific. Last year's heart surgery mistake. He altered the records to hide his error. Fortunately, the patient survived, but not because of his skills. It was due to the desperate efforts of the emergency team. Michael tried to stand, but his legs shook too much to move. And Miss Jessica. Your history of affairs. 3 years ago, you had a relationship with a married company president and were sued for damages by his wife. I know that Michael paid the settlement money. The blood drained from Jessica's face. Her pure white wedding dress now seemed ironic. Behind these two lay even more serious issues. Michael's substantial debts. Jessica's embezzlement at the beauty salon. Everything is on record. The venue erupted in chaos. Whispers spread among the guests. And the most despicable thing. David's voice carried anger. Their affair was planned. Michael was after Amy's assets. After marriage, he gradually transferred them to his name. He continued to exploit the savings Amy had worked so hard to accumulate, under the pretext of medical school expenses. Her parents gasped. Her mother's face turned pale. Jessica was also complicit in this plan. She aimed to monopolize the parents' assets by destroying her sister's happiness. For that purpose, she deliberately continued to hurt Amy with her words and actions. Amy was stunned by these facts. Such calculated betrayal had existed. However, the truth always comes to light. David pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is Dr. Michael's termination notice. Evidence of his medical record falsification was revealed in the hospital's investigation. His medical license will likely be revoked soon. Michael collapsed into his chair. And Miss Jessica. Your fraud at the beauty salon is under tax investigation. Wasn't this wedding paid for with embezzled money? Jessica broke down crying. Her pure white dress spread across the floor like a fallen angel. However, I didn't come here to expose this. David's voice regained its gentleness. I came to prove true love. Amy, far from being unloved, you are the person most deserving of love. He held up a ring again. The ring caught the sunset light, casting a rainbow glow. Amy Brown. Will you marry me? Let me cherish your pure heart and your kindness towards others for the rest of my life. A collective gasp escaped from the venue. Tears glistened in the guests' eyes. Sarah Wilson, led by her mother, stepped forward. In her small hands was a bouquet of white roses. Be happy, the innocent voice brought large tears streaming from Amy's eyes. With a trembling voice, Amy responded. Yes. I would love to. Thunderous applause erupted from the venue. Even her parents were now standing, tears streaming down their faces. David gently slipped the ring onto Amy's finger. It felt completely different from the ring Michael had given her 7 years ago, both in weight and meaning. Let's walk this path together, for the sake of the children's smiles. David embraced Amy. At that moment, the chandeliers caught the sunset light, enveloping the couple in what seemed like a blessing of light. Jessica and Michael had already left the venue. But now, no one cared about that. In the face of true love's triumph, hatred and jealousy all fade away. 1 year later, on a spring day, soft sunlight streamed through the pediatric ward at Scripps Mercy Hospital. Amy Carter adjusted her crisp new head nurse uniform while gazing out at the San Diego cityscape through the window. "Amy, how are the preparations for the new ward coming along?" David gently called from behind. Their wedding rings gleamed in the morning light. "Yes, everything's on track for next month's opening. Staff training is proceeding as planned." Amy's voice was filled with fulfillment. Their dream was taking shape, the establishment of a specialized pediatric cancer ward. It was a pioneering initiative in the United States, aiming to combine state-of-the-art medical facilities with warm, compassionate care. Sarah was discharged yesterday. Complete recovery.
Ah.
The little girl who gave you the rose bouquet at the wedding? Yes. Now she says she wants to become a nurse when she grows up. She calls me her angel nurse. Amy's eyes grew moist. Her past suffering had transformed into genuine joy. Just then, there was a knock at the door. "Sweetheart, may we come in?" It was her father Thomas's voice. Her mother Martha stood behind him. Their expressions no longer held any trace of their former arrogance. "Dad, Mom, what brings you here?" "Well, we have something important to discuss." Her father's trembling hands produced a photograph. A family photo from 30 years ago. Young Amy and Jessica flanked by their parents. "We're truly sorry for always favoring Jessica, for trampling on your feelings." Her mother's voice caught in her throat. "But that wedding day, we finally realized what true love is, what family bonds really mean." Her father continued. "We'd like to take a new family photo. This time with you and David, and..." Just then, Amy's belly moved slightly. Yes, the stirring of new life. The pregnancy discovered 3 months ago. Tears glistened in her parents' eyes. "We'll be good grandparents this time. Fair and kind." Amy quietly nodded at her mother's words. "Thank you, Mom. Dad." David watched with a gentle smile as the three embraced. Meanwhile, what had become of Michael? After having his medical license revoked, he had left San Diego and was working as a clerk at a small clinic in rural Arizona. He had sold his luxury car and spent his days struggling to repay his debts. But what hurt most was the cold stares from former colleagues. "That's the former doctor who falsified medical records." Such whispers still reached his ears. As for Jessica, she had fallen into an even more miserable situation. The embezzlement at the beauty salon was discovered, leading to criminal charges. Though she received a suspended sentence, her social media followers plummeted. Her flashy lifestyle had transformed into barely scraping by as a temp beautician in a rural Nevada town. "Sis, I'm sorry." Every night, she whispered these words alone in her room. However, there was no longer any hatred in Amy's heart. Her happy days with her new family had healed all wounds. "Amy, it's time for the meeting." David's voice brought Amy back to the present. From the large windows of the pediatric ward, she could see yachts floating on San Diego Bay. She remembered Carol's words from 7 years ago. Life often holds unexpected happiness. How true that had been. Real happiness had been waiting beyond the struggles she'd overcome. Amy smiled softly while placing a hand on her belly. Well, shall we go? For our dream ward. Taking David's hand, Amy started walking. The corridor was decorated with photographs of smiling children. Each one was her pride and joy. The spring light gently illuminated the future of the new family. Everything had ended, and everything had begun. Led by true love.